Hey, here's what I read in May. So in my April wrap-up, I did say I was going to try to read less books because it was really like elbowing into my writing time. So what I did this month instead was I spent the first half of the month really focusing on my writing, and then once I finished everything I needed to finish, I let myself read. So I did end up reading 7 books this month. Not all of them were very long, which is part of the reason I did 7, but I told myself I had to read less than 8, so I did it. Look at me. This month I read 3 romance, 2 mythology retellings, 1 thriller, and 1 sort of like historical magical realism book. We're going to start with the romance, and we're going to start with the first book I read in May, which was The Devil in Disguise by Lisa Kleypas. This is the last book in the Ravenels series, and you know what? I loved it, and I wasn't surprised I loved it because I love Lisa Kleypas so much. This book has a lot of fun tropes in it. We've got Merritt, who is our heroine, and she is widowed, which I do like a widow in a historical fiction because then she's not like the blushing virginal bride, like she knows what's going on. And then we have Keir, who is a Scottish whiskey distiller, and he comes to London and she is like sort of his distributor, and then all hell breaks loose. So there is someone like out to get Keir, and you can't really figure out why at the beginning, and I don't want to give away too much because about halfway through the book, something crazy does happen. But we do have an amnesia plot line. We do have a like, she's too good for me plot line. I don't usually like amnesia plot lines, but honestly, Lisa Kleypas is such a good writer, and I loved how she unraveled the amnesia. It was fantastic. This book, of course, has all the normal Kleypas steam that we all love, and she's just really good at those scenes. I am going to do a video where I rank all the Ravenels books because now I've read all of them, and this is definitely towards the top. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite in the series, but it was up there. It's like 2 or 3. Great read. If you haven't read this whole series, do yourself a favor. Go to your library, get them all, inhale them this summer. The next romance I'm going to tell you about is While the Duke Was Sleeping by Sophie Jordan. This is the first book in the Rogue Files, which is a series that I've been wanting to read for a while. And then when I was going through my Goodreads, I realized I read the 7th book first. I remember getting it from NetGalley, where I get my advanced readers copies, and feeling a little lost when I read it, but I didn't know it was the last book in this really long series. So this is the one that starts us off, While the Duke Was Sleeping, and it is a Regency retelling of While You Were Sleeping. I didn't love the movie While You Were Sleeping, and actually one of my friends called me out about that yesterday and was like, I don't know if I can be friends with you anymore. But I think the reason I didn't love it is because I never ever thought Peter Gallagher was like attractive. I was young when it came out. And so he just seemed like this like old man, and I couldn't understand why anyone would like him. This doesn't happen in this book. Instead, we have Poppy, who works at a flower shop, and the Duke has been visiting her, Marcus is his Christian name, to get flowers for all the women whose hearts he breaks. And she has sort of built this story around him, how he's this perfect man. He's going to sweep her off her feet. And she's had some hardship recently in her life. Now, one day when she's working, the Duke walks outside. This other man approaches him. The Duke punches that man in the face. They get into a wrestling match. Poppy gets out there and pulls the other guy off him, but the Duke stumbles back, almost gets hit by a carriage, but Poppy pushes him out of the way. But when she pushes him out of the way, he hits his head on a curb and is unconscious. So now the Duke is in a coma, and she says under her breath, not unlike Sandra Bullock, oh my gosh, you have to be okay. We're going to get married. Remember, you and I are going to get married. We're going to be so happy. And someone overhears this and thinks that she's his fiance. We follow the plotline of the movie. His family's wonderful. The guy that he was fighting with is his half-brother, who ends up being a much better match for Poppy than the Duke ever could be. It was so much fun. I love Sophie Jordan. Her books are great. I'm going to read the rest of the series, obviously. I got to grab a couple more the next time I'm at the bookstore. I gave this 4.25 stars. Very fun romance, very fun Regency. Give it a try. The next romance I read, I had an arc for, but it is out now, and it is Beasts of Time by Katie Hunter. Here is the cover. Katie Hunter and I are writer friends, and she writes sort of wild romances. So this book is a little hard to describe, but if you are a fan of like bonkers romance, like if you like romance with crazy outlandish plots, you're going to love this one. We are following a group of time travelers, and the story opens with Jack coming to see his wife in the past, Emma. And he sees her. He wants to see her because something's happened in the future. You're not exactly sure what, but he wants to see her. While he's in the past, one of his friends follows him and is like, you're not supposed to be here. You're upsetting the time continuum or whatever. And they start to fight. And Emma jumps on that guy, and she's actually like a really good fighter and accidentally kills him. So Jack whisks her away to another time to keep her safe. Now, in a little while, there's going to be a werewolf from the 1700s who's going to jump forward and have to live with Emma. And this turns into this crazy love square triangle shape going on with time travel and werewolves, and it's bananas, but it's so much fun. Honestly, this is one of those books that you just like smile, giggle the entire time when you're reading it. Katie Hunter's books are always like a little bit tongue-in-cheek because she is like a kind of like, she's British, so I feel like the best phrase to use is like cheeky, even though I'm never sure if I use that word correctly. Sense of humor. The book takes place in France, and she lives in France, so she's got the setting down pat. And the werewolf is French, and it's very hot. 5 stars, love it. Go grab yourself a bonkers romance. Okay, moving away from romance and into mythology retellings. The first retelling I read was Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel, which was my book of the month, I think, for April? ? And to be honest, I didn't love this book. So this is a retelling of like Hindu mythology, and I am not very familiar, and I've never read the epic it's based on, and I'm blanking on the name of the epic. I know it starts with Rama, but I think it's a longer word than that. I'll type it out here so you can see which epic it's based on. But apparently Kaikeyi is sort of like the villain in the epic, and so this is her point of view instead of the story. This book is written in parts. I think there's 4 parts, and I thought part 1 was fantastic. I loved it. It's when Kaikeyi is a child / young teen, about her life before she gets married, and I really enjoyed that part of the book. Her with her brothers, her like kind of studying these smaller gods and goddesses, figuring out this power she has where she can go into like this other reality and see sort of the bonds she has with people, which was very cool. The book sort of lost me in parts 2, 3, and 4 once Kaikeyi got a little older. One of the things I love about retellings is when you get like really human experiences for these mythological creatures. So like in Circe, for example, I liked reading about Circe being a mother or being in love. And this book didn't really feel that to me. It felt more like still a mythology piece where you're not getting a ton of like human insight into Kaikeyi. There were some reviews saying that she's supposed to be asexual in the book, and honestly, I did not get that at all, other than the fact maybe that she's not interested in her husband. But it didn't really feel like ace representation to me, but obviously I'm not ace, so if you felt that it had great ace representation, please say so in the comments because I would like to be educated on that. One of the hard things I had with the book also is I didn't think the author wrote children very well, and there is a big portion of the books where her son and then her son's half-siblings, who she also refers to as her sons, which was kind of confusing for me. The way that they talk and the way they interact felt very unrealistic and not like children. And even when they get older, it still didn't feel like she was writing a true mother-child bond. I don't know. So there were a lot of different reasons I didn't like this book. I do know that this book has gotten a lot of great reviews, so maybe you would love it. But in terms of a like retelling, it sort of felt flat for me. I gave this 2.5 stars, I think, which is kind of the, like, I didn't like the book, but I understand why it was published. You know, I don't think it's worthy of 1 star, which is like, I don't know why this was published. But this just really didn't speak to me in terms of a fantasy or a retelling. My next retelling is Elektra by Jennifer Saint, which has these stickers on it that I can't take off, and it makes me so mad. But Jennifer Saint wrote Ariadne, which I loved. Elektra is the story of basically the Trojan War / the fall of Troy, told from the point of view of Clytemnestra, Cassandra, and Elektra. I'm to be honest, I'm a little biased because Cassandra is one of my favorite characters in Greek mythology. She's cursed by Apollo to know the future, but that no one will believe her. And what a character that allows for. So Clytemnestra is the wife of Agamemnon, and Elektra is the daughter of Clytemnestra and Agamemnon. This is really cool story because it tells the story of the Trojan War while telling so little of the Trojan War, because it's really about the people that are on the outskirts of it. The Trojan War lasted 10 years, and something happens at the beginning of the war to make Clytemnestra hate her husband, basically more than anything. And then you watch her sit with her hate and plot her vengeance for 10 years, and I loved that. At the same time, you watch Elektra wish her father was home for 10 years, and then you watch Cassandra try to warn her entire family that Troy is going to fall for 10 years. I really liked this a lot. I'd say it's like 4.25 stars. I would say that it was on the same level of Ariadne, which I like them both a lot. I still think Circe is a superior book, but if you like mythology retellings, definitely read this. She does a really good job, Jennifer Saint, at making you feel like you're in Greece. So I went to Greece a long time ago, like 15-ish years ago, but there is something wonderful about Greece. The setting, the feel, the smell, the way the Aegean looks, the way the food tastes. She has a really good sense of place. So the whole time I'm reading this, I felt like I was like on a Greek island. Definitely like a heavy dose of nostalgia for me. So if you want to read something that makes you feel like you're transported to ancient Greece, pick up Elektra. Next, I read one thriller this month, and it was Breathless by Amy McCulloch, and I loved it. So this is a thriller that takes place on a mountain, and it's not Everest. I'm going to look at the word so I can pronounce it correctly. It's on Manaslu, which is the 8th highest peak in the world, and the author has actually climbed it, which I thought was very cool. So there's a lot of very realistic mountain climbing stuff in this story. Basically, the premise is that you're in this you're in the death zone and people are dying, but they're not seeming to die from normal accidents. They're seeming to die via murder. Our narrator, Cecily, is someone who has never actually reached the summit of a mountain. She's tried to climb several, and a few years earlier, there was this horrible accident in which she was climbing, she was stuck, and someone who tried to help her died. And that's really colored her experience with mountain climbing. And she wrote an article that went viral about that experience. And this very famous mountaineer, Charles McVeigh, who's trying to climb all these mountains in a single year without the use of alpine ropes, reads her article and says she can follow him on the mountain and she can write an article about him, but only if she reaches the summit. So she has a lot riding on reaching the summit, including her entire financials, because she had to pay for all of this equipment and her plane ticket to get here. And so she needs to be able to write this article. So she needs to summit, even though she's feeling like it's extremely dangerous and more dangerous than every mountain she's ever climbed. Amy McCulloch did such a good job building the sense of dread in this book. You feel so uneasy at the beginning. And I'm going to make my husband read this book because I think he would like it a lot. He loves reading stuff about mountain climbing. And it was a really engaging, fast-paced thriller. I am happy I read it in spring because if I was reading it during a snowstorm, I probably would have felt even more uneasy. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. Very fun thriller. And lastly, my favorite book I read this month is Blackbird House by Alice Hoffman. 5 stars. Amazing. So this book tells the story of a piece of land over 200 years and the people that occupy it. It's in Massachusetts. It's on the coast. It starts before the Revolutionary War. And we follow the families who are sometimes related and sometimes not over the next 200 years, and their joys and their sorrow and everything that happens in their lives. The coolest thing about this book is that each main group of characters only gets a chapter, about 20 pages. And Alice Hoffman makes you feel so deeply for these people and their grief that she's a genius. She's a master writer. It's lovely. A lot of times when I was reading this book, I felt like it was sort of like a love letter to sorrow. You're just sort of basking in what it means to lose things and people that you love so dearly and you can't imagine going on without. It is so wonderful. It definitely has magical realism vibes in it. I wouldn't say it's like a fantasy, but some weird stuff does happen, like pear tree that all the pears are red. There's a blackbird that turns white, stuff like that. A wonderful, fantastic read. It's very short also. I read it so fast, couldn't put it down. I think it'll definitely be a reread. 5 stars for Blackbird House. And that is my May wrap up. I hope that you found something on there that interested you. I'm not going to do a June TBR this month because I'm not really sure what I'm going to read in June, and I want to just give myself the freedom of reading whatever I feel like when I'm done with what I'm currently reading. I am currently reading 3 books right now. I am reading I didn't bring them down. When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. I'm reading Siren Queen by Nevo, and I am reading The Bride Goes Rogue by Joanna Shoup, and I'm really enjoying all of them. So stay tuned for my June wrap-up. It's going to be a good one. As always, I hope you are in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. See you soon.